Did you know? Brock wasn't always the first gym leader in the original Pokemon games. Illustrations by art director Ken Sugimori suggest a young child was initially the first gym leader. It's speculated that Giovanni replaced the child, and the first gym battle would have taken place in Viridian City instead of the 8th gym battle. The 7th gym leader, Blaine, originally had a different design. He initially wore a military uniform, which was eventually swapped out for lab attire. This was likely done to distance Blaine from Lieutenant Surge and to give Blaine stronger ties to Cinnabar Island. His appearance wasn't changed immediately, however, as early full-color art still uses this design. This design was also the foundation for Blaine's appearance in the Pokemon anime. In the original design documents for Pokemon, there was a charisma stat which impacted the player's chances of catching a wild Pokemon. This char mechanic was likely replaced by the current process of weakening a Pokemon before catching it. The series has other interesting features that were cut. During development of X and Y, there were plans to include a translation machine. This would convert a Pokemon's cries into dialogue, allowing the player to understand what Pokemon were saying. This idea had to be scrapped, as writing dialogue for the 600+ Pokemon was impractical. One idea that did make it into X and Y were Mega Evolutions. The Mega transformations were made temporary not just to balance the game, but also for aesthetic reasons. Series director Junichi Masuda explained, "I really like Charizard, and I also like the Mega Evolutions of Charizard, but if it stayed that way, I'd miss the old Charizard." When creating a new game, Game Freak decides how many new Pokemon they're going to add before designing a single Pokemon. Masuda told Retro Gamer, "When I'm envisioning what the world is going to be like, I think about what kind of Pokemon people are going to encounter there, and then how many are we going to need, so I come up with a number first usually." Pokemon games have been altered or censored in many ways over the years. Books in the Canalave Library, in the Japanese version of Diamond and Pearl, reveal something unusual about the history of the Pokemon world. There was apparently a time when humans and Pokemon married each other. This game explains that this was a normal thing, because long ago, people and Pokemon were the same. These references to marriage were removed in the English translation, which only states that Pokemon and humans used to eat at the same table. Pokken Tournament uses the same title in all countries except for Germany, where it was called Pokemon Tekken. The title was most likely changed to avoid sounding like the German word Pocken, which means smallpox. Some trainer sprites were altered in the international versions of Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. The sailor was originally shown flexing his arm and slapping his bicep. This is a harmless gesture in Japan, but an obscene gesture in other countries, essentially meaning up yours. In Pokemon Stadium for the Nintendo 64, the entrance animation for Nidoqueen was altered in the international release. This is because the original Japanese version showed the Pokemon cupping its breasts. At the Rendezvous Ferris wheel in Black and White 2, the player can battle a trainer named Nursery Aide June. In the Japanese version, June admits that they're actually a man in drag, and were only pretending to be a woman so they could be a nursery aide. In the Japanese version of Pokemon X and Y, a trainer is implied to be transgender. In the Japanese game, the woman says, "I was a Karate King just half a year ago. The power of medical science is awesome, wouldn't you say?" The dialogue was changed in the English version, removing any indication that a medical procedure took place. Black Belt is the English equivalent of the Japanese Karate King class, which has no females. Although the group is exclusively made up of men, the title Black Belt implies no gender, unlike Karate King, which implies a trainer is male. The change in dialogue makes the English text much more ambiguous. The French translators for Pokemon seem to have more fun with their versions. In the French Pokemon Crystal, the wise trio are named Ken, Shu, and Rao. This is a reference to characters of the same name from the manga and anime Fist of the North Star. When playing Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire in French, the gym leader Brawly will say, "I discovered the secret of true power by staring at a Helix fossil for days and days." This appears to be a reference to Twitch Plays Pokemon. This was a live stream where viewers were able to play the game by commenting in the stream. Due to the chaotic inputs, the viewers would often open up the items menu and attempt to use the Helix fossil to no effect. Viewers joked about the recurring mistake, saying they were consulting the Helix fossil as if it were a religious oracle. The original Pokemon games were remade in part so that players could truly catch them all on the Game Boy Advance. Trading between the original Game Boy and the Game Boy Advance was impossible, and Game Freak knew this from the start of Ruby and Sapphire's development. They created Fire Red and Leaf Green so that players could complete their Pokédexes. Although tedious, it's possible to transfer a Pokemon from Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald all the way up to Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. If the player does this, and speaks to the game director in the Cove Lily Motel with their transferred Pokemon in Slot 1, they'll be given a special time travel award. The award will say that the player has an unwavering friendship and an unbreakable bond with their Pokémon. Game Freak has actually remade part of Pokémon Red and Blue in 3D. Santaloon Forest in X and Y is a remade version of Viridian Forest. Both locations share the same layout and feature the same wild Pokémon. Metapod and Kakuna can be found in both forests at level 4, despite the fact that Caterpie and Weedle normally don't evolve until level 7. As well as reusing their own material, it seems that developers have used content made by fans. While visiting Dewford Town in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, one of the houses has a map on the wall. This map appears to be a horizontally mirrored version of the Poke-Earth map from Pokemon fan site Cerebi.net, and shows all the continents from across the Pokemon world. A somewhat creepier secret is hidden in the introduction for the Elite Four member Phoebe. Just as the first scene fades away, a young girl can be seen in the background for a split second. She appears again in the third scene of the introduction, where she's hiding behind the player. There's a lesser-known secret in Pokemon Crystal. Examining the right side of the right staircase on the top floor of Celadon Mansion triggers a message. There's graffiti on the wall. Player added a mustache. In X and Y, there's an old man living in Anastar City who's been struggling with depression after the death of his wife. The player can give him any one of their Pokemon that's level 5 or lower to cheer him up. After defeating the Elite Four, the player can return to the house and discover that the old man has died. The player finds the Pokemon they gave the man, a Comet Shard, and a letter thanking them for the Pokemon that kept him smiling until the very end. Did you also know that Brock was cut from the anime because the show's creators thought people would see him as a racist stereotype? Or that Misty wouldn't be brought back so they could keep adding new eye candy for male audiences? For more Pokemon facts, check out the Did You Know Movies video on the Pokemon anime. Or if you want more video game facts, check out the other Did You Know Gamings on Pokemon.